Yeah.
Okay, we're live now.
Okay.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining Speak Up Africa. For those of you who don't know, Speak Up Africa gives people the opportunity to access digital resources and promote social justice and civil action. Through our digital spaces that are on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter, as well as Instagram. Today, we're discussing a really important topic on radicalization and extremism, and just the growing menace of youth radicalization, which is presenting a challenge to peace, security, and development in Kenya. And I think it's time that we as citizens start having more discussions around this topic as it continues to grow relevance. For today, I'm joined by Anissa Manyala, who is an international studies student, and we are very honored to have Dr. Gizwa, who is a professor at Strathmore University as well as USAID. I'll let them introduce themselves. Dr. Gizwa, you can go ahead and introduce yourself.
Thank you so much, Maskan. Thank you for having me, and thank you for inviting me to this program. So my full name is Dr. Edgar Gidhua. I am my main area is in international relations, peace and conflict as well. I like diplomacy, and yeah, so anything around peace and conflict and violent extremism is in that area also. That's also an area I'm interested in. So thank you for having me for the show.
We're honored to have you. Anissa, you can go ahead and introduce yourself as well.
Thank you, Muskan. My name is Anissa Manyala. I'm a third year international studies student at Strathmore University. I am also a writer. I write a lot of poetry, especially surrounding my personal experiences and also the experiences as an African youth. So, yeah.
Great. Once again, thank you guys so much for joining us. So I guess we can get straight to the topic. I say the topic has relevance right now, considering we're seeing all of the minor extremist groups coming out right now. And I think for the longest time as a society, we've been focusing mainly on the more streamlined extremist groups like the Al Shabaab terrorist group. And meanwhile, in the background, we've been having other groups growing and doing their own things, like the Mackenzie issue that just happened. So, Dr. Githua, I'd like to ask you, what factors do you think are contributing to the appeal of extremist ideologies and these cult groups among the people, especially in East Africa?
All right, thanks, Maskan, for the question. There are a number of factors, and I'll begin by talking about maybe socio-economic factors. Number one, to begin, extremism or radicalization does not take place in a vacuum. It takes place within society. And the people who get radicalized ideally get radicalized because, to an extent, they have lost hope in their current way of life. So along comes someone who tells them or who gives them hope. Because at the core of radicalization is giving people hope of a better life, is giving people hope of a better way of doing things, a new way of looking at things. So it could be religious, it could be ideological, and all this you'll find that the foundation is that giving people hope. Of course, it is false hope. They discover that a bit too late, but given their set of circumstances, they agree and believe that is the right thing. So you'll find social economic issues are really driving up a lot of this radicalization, because when the youth people drop out of school because of lack of school fees, they come from big families, they need to fend for their families. People finish high school, they have no hope of going to university. They are adults, they are mini adults, they're in that transitional phase, and they need to do something with their lives. Along comes someone who tells them, look here, come, let us do ABCD. We are going to make money out of it. There's a better way of living the world. We can go and create our own small community where we will not have all these problems. It could be radicalization against the government. It could be an economic radicalization where the rich get turned against the poor, like in Marxism. Or the poor get turned against the rich, like in Marxism. So I think these are some of the things that you would probably be looking at. that are in East Africa, many economic issues. People are jobless, high cost of living, not being able to be fulfilled because of where they come from, not being appreciated by society. And then they fall into the arms of this person who really speaks and gives them hope. And I think from where I sit, I think those are some of the things that you could probably be talking about in terms of what is leading to increased radicalization in the East African space. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I think I definitely agree with you. It's these organizations are really exploiting on the vulnerabilities that the youth have. Anissa, would you like to add on to that?
He's mentioned most of them, but I like to add on to the economic factors. We see that there's a lot of unemployment going around and poverty, and you'll find these groups providing like economic incentives and like promises on to address these issues, which is actually attractive to youth. At this point, they are vulnerable individuals, so it does appeal to them. Yeah, I think that's the only thing I had to add on top.
Okay.
Yeah, definitely. And being a university lecturer, Dr. Gitwa, how do you think education plays a role in all of this? And how do you think the education sector can kind of put their foot in to stop the growing of these radicalist groups and extremist groups?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for your question. Education, I think for me, is key. It plays a huge role. And by way, when you mention education, I want to state categorically, starting from pre-primary education. Let's talk from kindergarten. The values that are instilled in our young people, those ones have become very key. In violent extremism, part of the people or some of the people who are caught up in this web of violent extremism have low self-esteem, have lived lives where they have been undervalued and they have not really been appreciated. So, right from education, right from kindergarten, and right from primary education, high school, all the way up to university level, if the education system can help to build confidence in our youth, an ability to believe in themselves, an ability to value themselves, that I am here for a purpose, I can do something, my education means something, we can begin to lay, let me say in IT terms, I'm not an IT guru, but I hear when you want to prevent your system from being hacked, you create a firewall. So a firewall kind of guards and safeguards against malware and viruses and all those things coming into your network. So in this sense, you will discover that in the education system, if children can start to be fireproofed or firewalled to believe in themselves, that they are worthy and they can pursue meaningful pursuits in life, I believe that is going to play a big role. Then another aspect to what you've asked is the most vulnerable stage, I believe, for radicalization is from high school up to young adulthood, which means basically people who are in their first doing their first degrees. So if I'm to give an age range, I'm looking at from 15 years, probably till around 22 years, 23 years, when people are about finishing or in the middle of their first degree. These are very vulnerable transitional phases in the human life, because this is when ideas get shaped. This is when young people start to discover who they are. This is when young people start to try and get a sense of purpose about themselves and what it is that they're going to do in life. So you'll find if it's in high schools, teenagehood and adolescence can be quite tough, and it's a rebellious stage when teenagers really feel they know what to do, they don't want guidance, they're in that rebellious phase. So it is very easy for them to fall prey to radicalization at this particular point. So from at the high school level, teachers need to be very vigilant in watching behavior, in watching the atmosphere and the environment in which these young kids are growing up in. If we transition to university level, our universities, and this is where Strathmore probably has done the right thing, teaches courses like philosophy, where students are taught critical thinking skills. Students are taught how to reason beyond what they're being told in class. And when you try and educate young people on how to reason, to logically question. So, for example, they come across this person who is telling them, let's go and join this group, let's go and join this cult, and life is going to become better in A, B, C, D. This young person, if they have gone through a solid education system, they'll be able to ask key questions like, okay, how does that change my life? Or logically explain to me how my joining this group is going to eradicate poverty. You know, that deductive reasoning and logical reasoning, logical inquiry that will make them realize, you know what, I am being taken for a ride, I'm being cheated. So education plays a huge part in that. Number one, it fortifies the individual to be able to face the pressures of extremism without succumbing. Education will help individuals to weed out the lies that are interwoven in these extremist agendas. And just maybe courses like ethics, the fact that you are taught right and wrong, what is the right thing to do, what is the wrong thing to do. So when someone tells you, let's go and kill someone, let's go and do something that is negative, the ethical values that and the norms that have been instilled in you through education will kind of create a firewall. And of course, now spiritual values, let's also not forget that spiritual values, when people go to, when people are spiritually attuned with either the church, the mosque, so the Bible, the Quran, or whichever it is that, whichever religion they ascribe to, and the values of their religion do not resonate with what this radicalizing person is telling them, they will be able to stand out and tell themselves, you know what, there's something that is not right. I don't think I should be in this space. And they will be able to walk out and probably even reach out to their colleagues who they are seeing going down this spiral, who are going down these issues. So education plays an important role, and I think it creates a firewall from where I stand. I believe it creates a firewall to, number one, insulate anyone from just being given propaganda or being given narratives that do not make sense, that eventually make them go down that dark path of radicalization.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. But do you think, considering you said Strathmore University teaches ethics, for instance, and the like, do you think the public sector, like the public universities and the government, is doing enough for the rest of the universities that aren't maybe private?
I believe the government is playing its role in that it has already. Remember when? Probably let me just go back a little bit. Before any program is launched, when universities are setting up and launching new programs, they take those programs for something called curriculum review. And in Kenya, the custodian is the Commission for University Education. And there are certain guidelines stipulated that help. There are certain courses that the government has insisted and encouraged universities to teach. Courses to do, for example, with reproductive health, HIV/AIDS. Those are mandatory courses. Whether universities do it or not, that's another thing altogether. And I also believe the government also tells us to try and educate students in their first year about quite a number of social aspects. And this is where I think a university can become more proactive. On an individual case-by-case basis, universities can decide to be proactive. Strathmore teaches ethics, teaches philosophy, those kinds of courses. Some universities like Daystar, African Nazarene, Catholic University, St. Paul's, make students go for Bible lessons, some call them chapel, where they get some form of counseling and Bible study and just religious studies. And you'll find that these students, one way or another, I am not saying that they're most perfect, but at least this system will begin to talk to these individuals about certain values, life values that would really help them. Because when they get to that crossroad in life and they begin to feel like, they are losing hope with life, they are losing the meaning of life, these foundations that they have gone through will teach them that they are valuable, that they are people who they have a sense of purpose. They should not give up on life. Life may not be the very best from where they sit and what they're going through, but eventually just encourage them that things can get better. And eventually this will lead them out of that radicalization path. So the government, I think on its part, has tried in encouraging universities to produce or have curriculums that instill these values in students. Whether universities do it or not is another thing altogether. So probably what I would suggest would be maybe periodical audits by the government to, impromptu visit a university and ask to see, let us look at what you're teaching your first years, regardless of whatever degree they're pursuing. The common courses, especially, try and throw an eye on the common courses. Are you teaching them ethics? Are you teaching them these values? Are you teaching them? Are you trying to help? Are you trying to equip them to manage university life and to be able to say no to negative peer pressure and radicalization? So I think if the government stepped up the audit aspect of this, it would really help. I know universities are very distant, and in terms of the disparities between universities are quite big. Some are very advanced, like Strathmore, USIU, Daystar, you name it. And then some are really lagging down there because of just lack of resources. But the government can try to create that level playing field by auditing them more and insisting that certain curriculum and certain courses need to be taught and introduced quite early to university students to just help prepare them for what may happen in campus. Because some of this radicalization you're talking about happens because of the peer pressure at campus, the groups that people join when they're in university, and these things are what lead them down this dark path of radicalization.
Okay. I think I'll switch the question over to Anissa, being that you are in Strathmore University and you're doing the courses that Dr. Kitwa is mentioning. Do you think it's helped you as an individual to see the world from a better perspective? And do you think it's helping your fellow youth to stay away from these extremist groups and radicalization groups?
Yes. For example, through my course, I was able to learn a unit called critical thinking. And through critical thinking, I was able to learn to think critically as well as analyze information from different sources instead of focusing on just one source of information. I think this skill of critical thinking helped like But so if sorry, I'm having a bit of an issue with network. Um, so if someone is able to acquire these skills, like the youth, normal youth, um, everyone, I think that it's able to reduce the influence of extremist ideologies and the occult groups. So yeah, and then also I believe that through the teaching of the introduction of units like ethics, we are able to get how to derive and how to provide accurate information. Information, yeah. So through these units, we can be able to to learn and to provide accurate information about the beliefs and the practices of these extremists like groups and ideologies, and we're able to also understand the risks that come about with joining them. And yeah, that's my opinion on the issue.
Okay, and just to add on to that, do you feel like the youth right now are playing a role in voicing their opinion when it comes to radicalization and extremism? Do you think we're as conversant as we should be?
Pardon?
Do you think we are as conversant as we should be with this entire topic? Like, are we having enough discussions as the youth regarding this issue?
I don't think so because okay, for example, there are discussions going on, especially on social media platforms, for example, TikTok. The other day there was a case of retaliation against, like, youth were retaliating against how they were treated in high school, and they were bringing up certain issues that affected them in high school. For example, you'd find cases of sexual assault, mistreatment, and they were able to voice their opinions, although they haven't been addressed officially. I think that there's an effort being made, but the effort isn't quite enough. We need forums to discuss the issues. We need a free space and an enabling space for us to voice our opinions on the discussion about extremist ideologies. And yeah,
Okay,
that's what I.
thank you for that. Um, Dr. Givua, I'd also like to pose a question to you.
Yes.
How do you think the international organizations that are based in East Africa right now, the UN, can collaborate with now our government to ensure that, again, the extremist groups are not increasing? And do you feel like currently are they doing enough, or can they do more?
All right. Thanks for the question. All right. The UN is. I know the UN is pretty stretched, and but this is of concern because once again, if we don't deal with extremism, for example, if people are getting radicalized and they end up joining, like you mentioned, groups like Al Shabaab, uh, eventually now that becomes a problem to the region because now in Al Shabaab, regardless of who it is that they are attacking or where they are staging from, that becomes that becomes an international problem, and of course the UN now is forced that comes under its radar. So yes, I agree with you. Prevention is better than cure. Are they doing enough? I know there are very many local programs that in helping community policing that have been instituted. How well supported they are, I may not have the facts on that, but I know the Kenyan government is keen in the Nyumba Kumi initiative. That security structure was, in essence, just trying to localize security to the level of every 10 households. The Nyumba Kumi, literally what it means, 10 households. Every 10 households have a way of knowing what their security structure is like. Every 10 households have a way of knowing what is happening in their neighborhood. And it's within this kind of a structure that you'd find, if the government so felt, it would, because now you see this Nyumba Kumi's initiative, these small 10 households cannot reach the UN directly. They would probably have to go through the Ministry of Interior. So I have a feeling what could happen is that depending on how well this Nyumba Kumi initiative is working, when the government audits that, it could seek for funding, let's say from the UN, to say this is for our security sector, this is to help prevent radicalization, and this money is going in enabling, for example, this Nyumbakum initiative. And what do I mean by this? For example, I want you people to just picture the Strathmore area. Let's not even go so far. Let's just all picture the Strathmore area. We have Aquila Estate, we have Siwaka, we have all this. And then let's try and apply the Nyumbakum initiative. We mean every 10 households, they have a leader, and probably they have monthly meetings or by monthly meetings where they talk about the security issues and anything of concern they have seen. So, for example, if in some of their meetings they say, we want to start a small patrol among ourselves where even if we have watchmen and security people, we want to have our own patrols where people go around. And ideally, what this would mean is that they'd be asking to be resourced. They'd probably want to have some extra gear, protective gear to walk around so they can patrol and make sure their neighborhoods are safe. What the government can do to such initiatives is now, if they find such organized Nyumbakumi initiatives, second some patrol policemen. That is an example I have seen working in Parklands, an area where, even though the government provides security, I have found the communities in Parklands also conduct their own patrols and they involve the police. So you'll find they volunteer their own vehicles. They drive around the estate in the evening. Inside the vehicle are residents from the estate, the ones who are on duty, and the policemen are there and they are going around in trying to just beef up security. Using that model, those same Nyumbakumi initiatives could also be forums where families start talking about, we are seeing our sons and daughters changing. They've been telling us they're going for certain meetings, and every time they come back from these meetings, we are finding them a bit very radical, very hardline. They have adopted some very hardline stance. All of a sudden, a child who was never religious becomes extremely religious. All they want to do is lock themselves up in the room to read, their Bible or to read some religious literature, and they start changing their dress code. At the face of it, they appear like they are changing for the better, But then parents start getting concerned that this person doesn't want to involve other people. So in this Nyumba Kumi initiatives, those discussions could be had, and that could find its ear to the government, and then the government will be able to know how to deal with the society. So I believe the government can try to get source for funding for all these initiatives that are out there. How able the United Nations and other international organizations are is another question, because remember, they are relying on goodwill donations and goodwill contributions from member states. How stretched they are and how able they are is now another question. But I believe if the government presented a noble initiative with a clear plan, with a clear structure, with a clear budget of how the money will be utilized, and if the government was accountable enough and very transparent, I believe these initiatives would get well wishers, not only from the UN, but even from other organizations, even private sector, who would be willing to support a noble cause that helps to reduce extremism.
Yeah, that's definitely true. There's only so much that the UN can do.
Yeah.
They are struggling a lot with resources, considering they depend on the countries, the member states, to fund them. Um, Anissa, I'd like to switch it to you now and ask, do you feel like you feel the impact of the, let's say, what Dr. Gitwa just said, the Nyumba Kumi initiative, or even the UN or any other international organization, as a youth? Do you feel like it's impacting the youth?
Yes, for example, the Nyumba Kumi initiative, you will find there are several areas where people live. You'll find that at least these neighbors have a WhatsApp group or a WhatsApp chat where they communicate to each other about maybe insecurity in the area and what is going on, like the updates about the area. I think, for example, yeah, the Nyumba Kumi initiative has worked. Even in my area, it's worked severally. People have been able to catch thieves. They're able to observe odd patterns of activity going on in the area, and that I commend. The Nyumba Kumi initiative, in my perspective, has worked. um the impact of the non-organized, like the NGOs, i I can say that yes and no at the same time, because okay, you can see the efforts. People are making efforts to have um clinics to teach people more about extremism, where you'll find there, like, let's say for example, barazas called in an area, and they informed that this and this has been happening in the area, and if you see anything like this happening, or if you're seeing early warning signs on it, please communicate to us, the police force, or yeah. So I can say that it has quite impacted the youth. Also, some organizations have provided a safe space for youth to express their thoughts freely. And for example, one of them is why can't I put okay. Okay, so some organizations have been able to provide a free space for people to talk about, like, to be free about what they're observing and what they're feeling about certain situations. And again, I yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I think it's interesting that you mentioned the WhatsApp groups. Dr. Gito, back to you again. Do you feel like social media and the internet in general is playing a part in this whole thing? And if so, is it positive? Is it negative? Is it a mix of both? What's your take?
Yeah, thanks for the question. Yeah, yeah. The social media is social media space is a double-edged sword, like you rightly put it. Um, terrorists have changed their tactics to include up to radicalizing and recruiting on social media space, and that same space has been used by other groups to also counter violent extremism and to also spread the good news of just trying to undo the damage that terrorism and radicalization has done. So the social media is a double-edged sword, like I'll keep saying, depends on who. It is a tool. Unfortunately, it is a tool that is out there that can be utilized. I don't know whether you guys have ever heard of something called the dark web. So the dark web, I hear, is the internet behind the internet. It's a space within the internet. I'm not an IT person. I may not have the language to exactly put it there. But you'll find recruitment and radicalization taking place on dark web spaces. These are parts within the internet where you are invited into certain sectors which cannot be monitored easily by security services. And through there you get teachings, videos, postings, and you'll find a child in Britain or a child in Kenya who has been given access to this dark web getting radicalized by someone who is in Afghanistan or name any other country. For lack of a better place, I've just mentioned Afghanistan, and not that I ascribe that purely just to them. But in other words, radicalization can take place on social media, on the internet, at a much grander and bigger scale, with a lot of stealth, with a lot of secrecy. And before the authorities catch up to what is going on, a lot of damage will have been done to the youth. So once again, we fall back to education. We're trying to ask our young people, what websites do you visit? Who are your friends on the internet? I keep seeing young children nowadays, even in high school, and the ones in primary who have IT programs, IT lessons. Those are some of the things that they're taught about internet proofing. It's good for parents also to internet proof their children. By internet proofing, we're talking about educate your children and expose them to the rights and wrongs on social media. The same way everybody has been talking about cyberbullying, the way our children sometimes go on the internet and because they're not supervised, they get cyberbullied and this gives them emotional scars. We also should be able to try and also teach our young people right from the time they get very interested with the internet, because the internet is a world of its own. It's a very captivating space. A lot of good can be done on the internet. A lot of good can be acquired and learned from the internet. And equally, a lot of negative things can be learned on the internet. Part of the moral decay we have nowadays in society is largely because of unregulated internet access. So picture that same internet. What terrorists and radicalizers and what these extremist groups have discovered is that the internet is a free platform for them to use. So they will create certain sites which will look very interesting, captivate, probably begin by bringing an audience speaker who is very good teaching about a particular issue, and then gradually change those speakers by saying next week we're having this guest speaker, and eventually start changing the tangent or the gradient of whatever it is that the content they are bringing out. And lo and behold, before you know it, someone has been radicalized subconsciously without knowing. So the internet space is very, very tricky. Can you regulate the internet? I know now, and I'm happy the two of you are international studies students. With liberalism, it is not very easy to regulate the internet because people have their rights and people will be up in arms about what you're trying to regulate them, what you're trying to curtail them from doing. But if there was a safe space of just trying to discover or control what happens, I will give an extreme example, and it's not the very best, but it will try and drive home the point. Countries like China regulate content on their internet space. So I am not saying that is the way to go, but I would imagine if a country like China imposes a lot of restrictions on the internet within its jurisdiction, it means its security forces probably are always trying to weed all these websites and all these spaces to find out what information are the Chinese consuming. So that may sound extreme, and many countries don't have those kind of resources. China is an economic superpower. Most countries may not have that ability. But if the government could go an extra mile in trying to just peep at what is being peddled on social media, what do the young people talk about social media? I like what Anissa was saying. She said people were venting on TikTok about how their high school life was not the very best. So does the government regulate what these sites are doing? Does the government try and keep an eye and track of what is happening in that kind of space? If it doesn't, it needs to start doing so. And if it does, then it should be able to put in place measures to try and pick out teachings or lessons or forums which are negative and which are leading to radicalization of the young people. Yeah,
Yeah,
thank you.
definitely agree with that. The whole liberalism aspect that you brought out. For those of you who don't know and are listening, liberalism is basically a political and a social philosophy that promotes like individual rights, civil liberties, democracy, free enterprise. So basically, having the government interfere as little as possible with the civil and the citizens of the country. And yeah, I see countries like China definitely do control a lot of what goes on the internet and stuff like that. And with Kenya, you'll find that that's not very common. Everyone just speaks whatever they want to speak on the internet. And yeah, it can be very damaging, in fact. So, Anissa, I'd now pose it to you. Do you feel like, as the youth on social media, how is this affecting you? Do you actually see this, like what Dr. Gito was talking about, the dark web and all of that stuff? Is it something that you are all part of and witnessing?
So the dark web isn't okay. I'm familiar with the concept, but it's not accessible to everyone. It is quite backroot. Also holds the key to the like the black market and everything. So yeah, social media, again, I'll agree with Dr. Gizwa, has, it's a double-edged sword. So you'll have platforms that will do good instead of harm, and there are other platforms that do more harm than good. For example, TikTok, for example, yeah. So you have TikTok as a space for anyone to post videos of what they like, to share their opinions. But again, they're being regulated, but not even by people within the country. They're being regulated by, I don't know where the base is, but I think the TikTok headquarters are in the US. So you'll find that these websites tend to filter out certain words or police certain words or certain topics, which in some way there's like media is used to silence people. For example, again on the TikTok trend on exposing high schools for their, or for not being accountable for whatever is going on in their schools. There was a man who had posted a story about what was going on in a certain high school in western region of Kenya, and the video kept on being brought down, and the reason is it's being said that he's inciting. That was the reason for the videos being pulled down. Yet he was trying to communicate to the masses that this is a problem and it hasn't been addressed until now. So it's like he's being silenced by the app. So maybe when it comes to regulating the social media apps, there should be certain parties involved, and that, okay, we can't say that everything can be regulated at once, because again, it's technology. This is AI, these are not human beings. So again, there should be as much of human involvement in policing whatever is being put online. And yeah, I agree on providing firewalls, because people are exposed to very graphic things at a young age. For example, um streaming apps uh there's what's it called? Ooh. Okay, some streaming apps like Twitch don't really have filters. There was another day I had joined a stream, and you find young boys commenting, sending bots of the Nazi flag, and it's quite triggering to most people. And that's an issue. Again, there needs to be regulation. There's a lot of exposure to information that isn't appropriate to young children or young people, and in the long run it ends up messing up their perspective on things and how things work. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, Again, I agree with both of you. The social media is definitely a double-edged sword. We can't really control a lot of it, but I guess the government and we, as well as the users of the internet, can try our best to not put out such disturbing content. Um, so just bringing it back home now. Um, we recently saw the case of Mackenzie, Pastor Mackenzie, and the whole fiasco of him brainwashing people to starve themselves to death and all of that. Dr. Gigua, this has been done in the past. Brainwashing leaders who brainwash people into a cult and make them believe so strongly in something. For instance, Hitler with the whole Nazi thing. Um, what do you think is bringing this back, or do you think did it never stop the whole use an ideology to brainwash people?
Thanks for your question. Now, this is more in the line of forensic psychology. This is more in the line, I'll admit out there that I'm not an expert in forensic psychology. This is where this exactly exists. But I'll fall back on the little that I know in terms of radicalization and violent extremism. These people who get radicalized, or these people who follow someone like Pastor Mackenzie and any other such leader. There have been one in Uganda who locked up people in a church and they burnt themselves. There's been one in the US who has done that. People have engaged in mass, in more horrific. The Kenyan situation, this time he told people to fast, and he tells them to fast so they can see God, so they can meet God. So when he feeds them the hope that they can meet God, and when they meet God, all their problems will be over, people stop reasoning. Um, people stop seeing the problems that they're going through, and they begin to see the salvation, and they begin to see the value they will get, or the value addition they will get in seeing God, because He will solve all their problems. So remember, if you look, and I don't want to disparage any part of the society. If you look at the majority of His members, they're from a certain social class. From the stories you've heard, they would be from the lower middle class to probably not so well off in society. And he goes and feeds them hope and tells them your station in life can change, your situation can change. So once again, what he was trafficking was hope. You know, it is religious hope couched with, we agree in the faiths, in all faiths, Christianity, Islam, which I can confidently speak of, probably Hinduism also do it, I'm not so sure about it. But in Christianity, especially, which I am well conversant with, and the Islamic faith, in the Islamic faith, there is fasting, the Ramadan, uh, which is a prescribed time when Muslims are supposed to fast. In Christianity, there are also times when people are supposed to fast. For example, when they need to draw closer to God, when they are praying for certain things and they really want God to help them. So fasting is a sign of humbling yourself before God. But if we take Mackenzie's case, when he told them to fast until some of them die, because I'm trying to imagine that picture, that mental picture, you are hurting yourself, but you are bearing with it. And probably the first 10 people who died, that may have been a mistake. But everybody who followed through, my biggest question continues to be, didn't they see their neighbors dying and not ask themselves not ask themselves some logical questions like, how comes our colleagues have died and they have not yet met God? So brainwashing is very tricky. It is like someone is in a trance. Short of saying they have been drugged, which I believe they were not, and I do not know, the pathologist will tell us. These people believed that what he was telling them was the truth. So, from where I sit, he took advantage of his position of spiritual authority to convince these people that if they followed what he was saying, they would get help for their problems. And unfortunately, these are the people who are low in society, who are very vulnerable, who believe him, who have so many issues going on in their lives, and they're looking for this one person to give them hope. So when he tells them this is the way, this is the ticket out of their poverty, unfortunately they believed him, and that is why they led to their demise. Bigger questions arise. How did all this happen without anybody seeing? But that's a discussion for another day. But it's largely selling hope. That is what he was selling. He was just trying to tell them, you people can get better in life, you people can get a better station in life. Yeah, thanks.
Okay, just to follow up on that, yeah, it is indeed a really sad story and unfortunate situation that happened, considering that over 80 bodies were found, and yeah, they continue to uncover more people who have passed on. But I did remember seeing on the news that this situation had been going on since 2019 or even before that. So, what do you think was holding us back as a society from seeing it, or what do you think the government was missing? Where did we go wrong?
I think there'll be a lot of, once you involve the security forces, there'll be a lot of blame game going on around there. Because, I mean, if we've been following news, we hear at some point he was arrested, then he was released. Some politicians are on record saying that he used to receive some protection or political protection. So this actually is a wake-up call to our society, all right? The corruption, the ineptness in our society, because let's just have a candid conversation. If it is true that this thing was happening from 2019 and people had reported that their family members were missing, why did the police take it seriously? Is it that they were compromised, or they did not take it or they did not take the report seriously? So we have all these issues out there, and I know there'll be a merry-go-round, there'll be a circus around it. Nobody will want to own up. No, the security sector will not want to be caught flat-foot in that. They will not want to own up to the responsibility. The chiefs, the nyumba kumi we've been talking about. This is maybe quote unquote one of the few challenges and failures of the nyumba kumi, because people around that society should have realized some of our people have gone to that church and they have not come back. Why can't we make more noise about it? I remember watching news and hearing that Aisha Juma, one of the MPs in that region, had really complained and made noise about it. But somehow someone shut her down, someone ignored what she was trying to say. And now we are all crying, the nation is mourning for something that should have been dealt with. So there's a lapse in something in terms of how should I put it? Not the lapse in judgment. Someone somewhere slept on the job. The truth of the matter is that someone somewhere slept on the job. Someone should have followed this up and made it more, taken it up more seriously, opened up a serious investigation to really find the truth of the matter. And if at all it's true, people were dying, see, from back then, I think serious action should have been taken back from back then. So, as a society, we are to blame. The security sector need to just own up that they made a mistake. And I hope this time going round forward, they'll be more vigilant and they will take these reports more seriously.
Yeah, definitely. I think this is something we can all learn from, especially the security sector. We can already see a change as they uncover even more of these extremist groups throughout the country. So hopefully it gets better and we uncover some of these really horrific groups. We've just been joined by Ted, who is the Strathmore Student Council president and BA student as well, in his final year of communications. Ted, if you just unmute and introduce yourself to the panel and everyone who's watching.
Right. My name is Ted. I'm the Student Council President, the 14th President of the Strathmore University Student Council. I'm currently serving, still in my tenure. I am, as you said, in my final year. What I think would be important, and I think why I was chosen for this, is because of the things I used to do before I even became president. So before then, I used to run the debate society in Strathmore University, and we tend to speak up on a number of these issues that are here. We try to use it to educate, create awareness, especially because we've realized there's a knowledge gap in terms of various institutions and schools. So this is our way of trying to create awareness on the things that matter, emerging issues and emergent issues. And we try as much as possible to educate the younger generation. So personally, I'm also a mentor to a number of students. I coach a number of schools in debate. I hold tournaments, both regional, continental, and I recently just opened my academy, hoping to now expand now after graduation and reach as many people as possible. So yeah, that's me in a nutshell.
Congratulations on the academy. Wish you all success in that. Um, I do have a question for you, though, as a communications student. Do you feel like the media did enough in covering stories and bringing light to such extremist groups and radicalization groups throughout the years?
I think the challenge now is not even if they covered enough. They do cover a lot of stories, especially of such um, magnitude and such occurrence. We call it oddity. So oddity is one of the things that we call newsworthy. So the oddness, the ambiguous nature of some things, the weird things that happen are covered. I think the problem is not the covering. The problem is the perception itself. Because remember, we're in a country where a majority of people believe wholeheartedly in religion, and we're in a very, not that we have a state religion, but we're in a population where the poor people really look towards religion as a sign of hope. And the problem is not whether or not they've covered enough, it's whether the audience is okay with it. Because again, criticism of religion is something that people take very would take very aggressively. So you can't criticize someone's religion even when you know it's wrong. You can't tell them that the practices are wrong. Churches right now have become sort of a money making scheme, in my opinion, for the better part of what I've seen in news. People are going to the extent of giving tithes from their bank statements. You have to submit your bank statement for churches. I think they've covered quite a bit of the cases. The question is whether the audience is okay with the news. We normally have a saying, interpretation is up to the audience, but the news is given in an objective manner. So I think they've covered enough. It's just a matter of us now interpreting it.
Okay, just a follow up on that. As Kenya, we do have the freedom of expression. Do you think the media is truly given that freedom? Is it really exercised?
I think the media in Kenya enjoys quite a bit of freedom compared to a number of countries. It's now, but now the challenge normally is the repercussions that come as a result of the freedom. I think it's only Kenya where we can even openly criticize governments and do such things on news. Um, I think they enjoy quite a bit of freedom. It's now how best do the citizens now see the value of the freedom, because the media itself is given the freedom. They report all sorts of cases, embezzlement, and everything, things that touch on various politicians. It's now the implementation now of the freedom itself that after they report the news, especially of criminal cases like this, like Mackenzie, that now the government needs to take some serious action and follow up on it. But in terms of freedom, I believe we do have enough freedom in Kenya in terms of the media.
Okay. Just to add on to that, being part of the youth right now, do you feel like the youth played a role in the rise of these extremist groups? And what do you think we as the youth can do to solve this issue?
That's a wonderful question. So I think the truth of the matter is yes, we do. Because at the end of the day, we are the ones who are the biggest population in the country at the moment, but we are also deeply affected by the government's, maybe let's say, failure and the challenges that face the economy. So things such as poverty affects the youth to a greater extent, and this is as a result of unemployment. Yeah. So because of the fact, due to the fact that we have a large pool of unemployed youth, it leaves them vulnerable to, let's say, religious brainwashing. Because at the end of the day, you're seeking hope, you're seeking some semblance of, um, hope, you're looking for light in your life. So the only way people get that is through religion, and I think that's the worst way, because at the end of the day, I'm not criticizing religion. I'm just saying you don't know the boundaries between when you have become an extremist and when you become a staunch follower. So you could abide by every law that the church gives, but now people tend to lose logic and tend to follow things blindly. Because even when you look at the majority of the people who died in these extremist situations, it's always the youth. It's always a young person who's been, told that this is the way to get to heaven. It's never people who are of older generation, old age. People who tried to live their lives and make something out of their lives are less vulnerable to this extremist groups. The youth also have the solution, and I think I'll borrow this from how the '94 genocide of Rwanda against the Tutsi happened. It's the same youth that were used to kill the same Hutu youths that were used to kill the Tutsis, but it's also the same youth in general in Rwanda that helped rebuild the country. So I believe right now it's a matter of us now like, looking at it and saying, where do we find the solution and how does it look like? For me personally, I think I'm taking a step because I'm trying to ensure that we talk about this issue. We don't want people to be at a point where there is idleness. Yeah. So things such as hobbies, such as skills, could easily help you at least get some semblance of income. So it's a matter of now us educating ourselves. So the truth is, there's a pool of knowledge that is given to students of the university level, and maybe even high school level. But at the end of the day, if this knowledge is not shared, it becomes an issue. So, from our experiences, and even for you as Muskan, as a person in Strathmore University, you've of course been exposed to a diverse pool of students and a number of people who come from various financial backgrounds. So, it's up to us again to use the resources that we have and share them out with other people. This just looks like us having conversations like this, calling rallies, talking to you, engaging in cinemas, activities, festivals, help people plan community-based activities. So, like for me, it's mostly debates. So I hold debate tournaments for young high school kids. I mentor kids who are currently maybe let's say facing mental health challenges, and I try as much as possible just to give them the hope but also give them a skill, because if they're able to express themselves, for me I feel like we will be able to know what the issue is. So the conversations must begin and the solutions must be gotten, but we also need government intervention as well. If jobs are created and are available, there'll be less dependency on faith, because now people know that I need to work hard, and also Kenyans need to change their culture. We're also in a society where people believe in things such as witchcraft, and I don't know why people still do, but we need to change the culture and let people know that as much as there is a God, we can also help fix things. We don't need to rely fully on faith. We also need action. Even the Bible says faith without action is dead. Yeah.
I think that's really interesting that you mentioned hope. Dr. Gidwa mentioned the same thing, and I feel like maybe that's all Kenyans need at this point is hope, but the source of hope is what's really changing the storyline. Anissa, Ted mentioned mental health, and I know you were really passionate about mental health, and you mentioned you write a blog as well. Do you think mental health is playing a big role in this entire situation with extremist groups? Do you think the government can do better in addressing the issue? And do you also feel like it's a cultural thing that we as a society do not address or take mental health seriously?
Yes, I feel like I believe that mental health is part of the problem. Um, when it comes to mental health, we see that people are turned away from getting help. Maybe they feel like they're not deserving of help, or maybe there's no way that they can get help. So you'll find these extremist groups or identities will come about trying to provide them with an identity. They're not sure about their own identity, so they come and provide them with an identity. And through offering mental health services or even just a safe space, a free space for youth to communicate, we can be able to eradicate the influence of these extremist groups. Yeah. Also, mental health hasn't been ignored. I feel like it has actually improved. The government has actually made an effort. These days, if you actually even like Google online, you're given a list of hospitals that actually give out free mental health services. Um, Most of them are in Nairobi. So what I maybe can recommend to the government is to expand to rural areas, because also, of course, rural areas are affected by the same mental health. No one is exempted from having mental health issues. We are all human at the end of the day. So everyone is deserving of being able to benefit from getting services. So all I can recommend is maybe that these services also be expounded on in other counties and other mostly remote areas. So yeah.
Okay, yeah, I think that's valid. A lot of the times we focus a lot of things in the urban area, and then we tend to forget the more rural sides, which are actually more heavily affected by these extremist groups and radicalized groups, because they target they target their vulnerabilities. So yeah, maybe the government does need to expand to rural areas in terms of having mental health professionals and even encouraging people to take up psychology in universities as a university degree and a major. Just to finish up and close up, Dr. Gidua, what would you advise the youth right now when it comes to extremism and radicalization? What can we do better from your perspective as a professional?
Yeah, thanks for the question. A lot of things, and I like what Ted and what Anissa have said, and speaking in that space as the youth and what they're experiencing. The biggest advice I'd give youth who are listening outside there is that there is a time and place for everything. Um, of course, now I can say that right now I'm in my 40s, but putting myself in my 20s and trying to go back into my 20s, the kind of advice I wished I had received at that point. The youth nowadays are so privileged, regardless of where they are, and especially in urban youth. Let's start begin by urban youth or in educated countries like Kenya, which have a high literacy level. The youth are very privileged because there are many forums for information. The social media is very active and all that. But the biggest thing I'd tell any young person outside there is that once you finish school or once you're really rushing, the fight usually is you want to finish Strathmore and get to your fourth year. And then when you get to your fourth year and you finish, and then you discover, oh my God, I have the rest of my life. What next? So I'll tell people to slow down, take their time, and think things through. Whatever decision you have to make about your life, whatever decision you have to make about anything you want to do, think things through. Just take a step. It will not cost you. Do that cost benefit analysis, become a rational actor, become a rational person. Ask yourself, what is the advantage of this? What is the disadvantage of this? And always, like what we said, we began the show by talking about critical thinking. Always ask questions after questions, ask questions within the questions about any decision you want to make. That way, you will find young people will start making more informed choices about anything they want to do in life. You have joined this group, you've been promised to join this group, and a lot of things will happen to you. Critically ask yourself the big questions. Where am I? What am I joining? What is it for? What is in it for me? Ask deep critical questions. And when you get to crossroads, I like what someone said, I can't remember who it is, between Ted and Anissa. Reach out to other people who have experienced for just to corroborate the information. You could be told, let's go and join this group, but then ask around. Do people know about this group? Have you people heard what they do? Or they're promising they're going to pay for my scholarship to this country? Because some of these radicalizing groups actually pretend they're going to pay for you a scholarship. You're going for a 2 week conference and it's a fully paid conference. And here we are young people who want to travel the world, we go and sign up. Then we give out our passports and we go for 2 weeks. We will go for the trip, we will come back, but we come back when we are changed. What happened during the trip you don't want to share with your friends. Think things through. Just take your time, think things through. And I think if we can create that culture of just trying to be critical thinkers, we are going to salvage a lot of our youth, and we are going to be able to make informed choices about so many things, and we'll avoid some of these mistakes that other young people have made in the past. That's what I'll tell the young people right now. Just try and take your time. The world is waiting for you. You will finish your high school, you will finish your university life, and discover you have another 50, 60 years to go. You have the rest of the you have time, you have the rest of your life to do whatever big things you want to do. So just take your time, think things through. Yeah, that's what I would say.
Thank you so much for that, Dr. Kipwa. As you've all heard, take your time, think things through. Um, it's never the end of the world. Like, we have so much time to go, and I feel like we need to have such forums and discussions more often as the youth. I really encourage everyone who's watching this to speak up, express yourself, as Ted said, because the more we express ourselves, the more the society around us will be able to hear us out and help us out. Yeah, I guess that's all for this forum. I'd like to thank Dr. Gibua, Anissa Manyala, and Ted for joining us and taking their time to be part of this forum and giving us very meaningful and worthy advice that I think we can all take into consideration when we're making the next decisions. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining. If you want to interact more with us as Speak Up, please feel free to give us your input and comments on all our social medias. We're on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and we even have a website where we post blogs on matters concerning the youth and citizens of Kenya and East Africa. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.